We are recording the interview of Harry Wright. This interview is being conducted by Ericka Carter from the Wright State University Veterans Voices Project. This interview is being recorded at the Holliday Inn, 2800 Presidential Drive in Dayton, Ohio. It is 1:50 p.m. on June 7th, 2019. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing fine.
That's great. Okay. Where and when were you born?
I was born in hospital in Wilmington, Delaware, January 20, 1947.
Wilmington, Delaware.
But I was raised and lived in Delaware City, Delaware, which was about a half hour south of the city.
Okay. Is that a big city or a little town?
Small town on the banks of the Delaware River.
Who were your parents and what were their occupations?
My dad, Harry Wright, he was in the Army Air Corps, and when he got out after World War II ended, he resumed his work with the Army Corps of Engineers, where he retired in 1976. My mother came from Chicago, went out to Arizona for her father's health. They said he needed to be in a warm, dry climate. She left college to do that, and her and her mother and brother went out there. She met my dad. They got married. And the war ended. She and my dad returned to Delaware City, and my mother became a housewife and a mother. And about the time I was in third grade, she decided to take night classes and finish her college degree. And she did that and became a teacher and retired as a teacher right around 1974, 75.
You have siblings?
I have one brother, about 4 years younger.
Okay. Did he serve in the service also?
He was in the U.S. Army.
Did you tease him about that?
No.
No.
No. We were raised by my dad to respect people for what they chose, if it was an honorable thing, and that's the way it was.
No, military is honorable, absolutely. Okay. What were you doing before you joined the service?
I was a high school student. I went in the Air Force I graduated in June of 1965, and I took some lifeguard training. I worked as a lifeguard at a state park until September 15th of 65, where I departed for Lackland.
Were you drafted, or did you?
No. My dad, for a man with limited education, was one of the smartest people I've ever known. My mother being a school teacher in the same school I went to, my desires to go to college wasn't really high because I couldn't get away from school. So when I turned 18 in January of 65, the law was that every boy had to register for the draft, and their father had to go up there with them to do that, to prove who they were. So my dad got a day off work from the government, and he took me up there to register for the draft. I registered, and he looked at me and said, "Are you sure you're not going to go to college?" I said, "I'm not going to college." "Okay, we're going down to the Air Force recruiter." And that's how that happened. And I was a very small kid, weighed about 110 pounds, 5'3", and he looked at me and said, "You're not going to go in the Army, be a tunnel rat." So that's how it happened.
Can you tell me what a tunnel rat is?
Those are little guys that go into the tunnels in the jungles looking for the enemy as they hid in there or had set up shop and operate out of these tunnels. So a tunnel rat would go in there looking for these people. And there were booby traps set up all in there. So their life expectancy wasn't real high. And they had a high fatality rate. And it's just small guys my size, but only about 100 pounds, 110 pounds. So they could go in and out. The size of the North Vietnamese, they're called. They could go in and out the same places they went because they weren't big tunnels, they were small.
That doesn't seem like an ideal job for anyone.
No, it does not.
Okay, so Dad was a smart guy.
Yes, yep.
Did he ever tell you about his World War II experience?
Very little. He actually became disabled before I was still stateside, but he was in communications. So because he was a communication person, they didn't send him back home, they kept him. Even though he had a disability, that he couldn't go overseas, but they kept him stateside for that communications for all the stateside operations. That's what he did. He was with the Signal Corps.
Okay. So you joined the Air Force. You're off to basic. Basic was at Lackland?
Lackland Air Force Base.
6 weeks.
It ended up being, it started higher than that.
Mm-hmm.
I think initially it was like 10 or 12 weeks, but when we shipped out, they had cut 2 weeks off of that. And then the 4th week in, they came out, and I remember telling the guys, well, we're 4 weeks into this, we're halfway through, or 5 weeks, we're halfway through. And they came out and said, we are, for most of you guys, you're getting 2 weeks cut off of your basic training because you're going to go straight to tech school. So I only had about 8 weeks of basic and shipped right out to Shepherd Air Force Base. And I was out there for about 14 weeks in engine mechanic school.
Did you choose mechanic school, or was that chosen for you?
No, I did not. I was a volunteer firefighter, and I was real good at first aid. So I wanted to be either in the fire department or the pararescue type guys. And unfortunately, my physical size, I was eliminated from that. And they made me a mechanic, and I had absolutely no mechanical knowledge whatsoever. So I started at square one, where most of the other people in the tech school classes were guys that worked on cars, had cars, did stuff. You know, they were way ahead of me. But I managed to go through the entire tech school, never failing or being set back. So,
did you ever grow a passion for it, or you were just, I gotta do this?
not until a tech sergeant by the name of Wade Weatherman took me under his wing. And he had a son probably a little bit younger than me, and I don't know if I can remind him of his son or what, but I went to Hurlburt Field, England Air Force Base Field 9. That's my first duty assignment. And I was in the build-up shop and the PM docks, and I was lost. I mean, I was really lost at what people were doing. I just didn't recognize airplane stuff. But one of the fellows out on the flight line, the troubleshooting crew, he got sent, he got orders to go somewhere else. And I remember telling the master sergeant that was in charge, what would he do out there? I had no knowledge, you know, he was telling me. And I said, what's going to happen now that so-and-so has left? I said, well, I need to get someone to go in there. Do you think you might want to do it? Yeah, you know, it sounds like I might learn something out there instead of being in here. So I went out there, and then Wade Weatherman comes in, and he becomes my immediate supervisor. And when he realized I had some problems catching on to stuff, he made it certain that I was with certain people to train me. And one day, it just all clicked in. And when I got my orders to non-confidant Thailand, in September '67, about 2 months later, he got orders to non-confidant. He came over there, and he was in charge of the flight line night shift crew, the troubleshooters, and I was in the docks, which he knew I didn't like it. And it just preventive maintenance. He knew I didn't like it because I couldn't understand why we were doing certain things. And as soon as he saw me, he knew I was there. He came looking for me. He said, you like what you're doing? I said, not here. You want to come out here with me? He said, of course. Get your tools. He didn't even tell my supervisor, who was a staff sergeant. He loaded me up, and the staff sergeant finally found him, and he's complaining, you know, he's going to report stuff. He said, I don't want this guy, this boy. I said, not a problem, I got him, he's with me. Tell him, don't complain about it, just say you sent him out there with me. And that's where he is. So I spent the rest of my time with him, and I did very well. In fact, I would say I did excellent. I was with other guys, we're all two-stripers. We had Tech Sergeant Weatherman as our line supervisor and a staff sergeant. And I don't think we had a three-striper until one of the two-stripers got promoted to 3 stripes.
Okay, just so I understand, you're saying you were an E2 and, right?
Airman second class, that's what they called it. They changed it Airman first class, but I had 2 stripes on my sleeve, so yeah, E1, E2, whatever it was.
Okay, and the tech sergeant,
yeah,
Weatherman,
yes,
was what rank?
Oh, he had 5 stripes, so he'd been in E6.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Okay, and then the guy that he took you from, did he outrank him or no?
No, he was a staff sergeant. He was an E5.
Okay, so he was, I don't care what you say,
yeah,
he's coming with me. Yeah. All right.
And that really, and I was with guys that I was friends with, was, you know, and You know, being in the military, you have certain groups of people that you're friends with, and you're friendly with others, but that certain group, and that group.
When did you make these friends? Was it
When I got there a little bit before most of them did, and they came in after me, and I ended up in the same, you know, shops, and then we had a 4-person barracks for, they call it a hooch. It was a room with 4 people, open air. But anyway, one guy was going home, and the other 3 guys that I was friends with, they came and got me right away and said, "Come on, we're loading your stuff up, you're moving in with us, and we'll tell the first sergeant later." And that's how it all happened. And the first sergeant says, "You did that? Yep. Is that what you want? Yep. Okay. Well, you're signing this paper, send and moving you." That's it. There was no questions.
Can you tell me about how you got there?
I got where?
To
Knock off and on?
yes.
Straight out of basic, or straight out of basic, I go to Shepherd Air Force Base for tech school, and then I got assigned to Herbert Field because it was special operations, and the war in Laos and Cambodia, the Ho Chi Minh Trail interdiction operation really increased, accelerated. And they needed mechanics on these old World War II type airplanes, so there weren't that many left, so they were doing a big rush to train people out of basic for that. So that's how I got to Herbert. And unbeknownst to me, Herbert was special operations, the Air Commando.
Where is Herbert?
Florida, Fort Walton Beach, Florida.
How'd you like Florida coming from Delaware?
I loved it.
Okay.
It was warm. The day I left Delaware, I was home only, it had snowed before I got there, and I was home for like 10 days, and it was like 20 degrees, and it was late February. And the forecast was not good for the next 6 weeks, and I roll into Florida, and it's like, wow, I'm warm. And then, of course, we're right on the Gulf of Mexico, so a day off, some of the guys that had been there, they took me on a wing, let's go to the beach, and I'm like, wow, this is great. I loved it. I really did. I've gone back. I didn't go back until 2009, but since 2009, I've been back about 14 times. I go every year to the Air Commando Association for that reunion and some other stuff. So, and then from there, then the orders came through for Non-Confinam, which was an Air Commando, first Special Operations, 606 to 56 Combat Support Group was, and so we did that. And Outer Halt was the wing commander at the time, and I forget who the base commander was, but never saw him. But that's how it all happened. We weren't told a whole lot of why we were doing what we were doing. Going into this, we're working on airplanes, and I'm on the flight line, so I'm talking to crew chiefs. And sometimes I see the air crews come in. Sometimes the pilot will come out and look at his aircraft he was assigned to, and what are you guys doing? You got to fix? Is it going to be ready? So I met these people, and in certain cases, you make friends. So on December 25th of '67, and Terry Kuntz, he was in a T-28. He was shot down or something in Laos, Ban Son Ping. Bailed out, but he was not recovered. So at that time, one of the crew chiefs, it wasn't really a crew chief, it was a combat controller, his name was Paul Foster. My group of friends, we'd work on everything. We knew him, somehow we knew him. And we were always under the impression he was a crew chief, but he was actually a combat controller. So there was a little secrecy going on. They were doing a night vision scope experiment on A-26s. And Carlos Cruz, the captain and the pilot of that aircraft, and Captain Bill Potter was the navigator, co-pilot. They only had a 2-man crew on A-26s. But that night, Paul Foster went on the A-26, and he was back in what would have been like a bombardier's compartment. He's operating night vision scope, and they got shot down. We knew they didn't come back.
None of them did?
None.
Okay.
But work on the airplane, knew Paul Foster pretty well. And we never heard anything more. We'd ask occasionally, what happened to Paul Foster? We don't know, nothing. So This story gets complicated, but never heard anything more. And when I got out of the service, I went into denial. 68 wasn't a good time to be a veteran or be in the service because of all the anti-war stuff and the hippie movement. So I went, and there's other things that happened to me. I just went into a denial and just didn't talk about it. And around 2007, my brother talked to me about Googling the bases you were stationed at and see what comes up. Because he had done that, and I found not Confidant, but I found Hurlburt Field, which I thought was closed. It was 3 times the size it was when I was there. It's the home of the Air Force Special Operations. So my dad had died, and I was dealing with selling his house. My mother died 10 years before that, and after that was all over with, I just needed to get away. And it was summertime, so in August I took my first trip back to the Gulf of Mexico, Fort Walton Beach, since 1967. Had no idea what I was going to do. I just went. I wanted to be there. It rained like crazy the first day, so I had this address of Air Commanders Association, which I had belonged to, but I stopped paying my dues when I was taking care of my dad. I called out there. Yeah, we're here. Come on out and visit with us. I did. And he said, this is what happened. I haven't paid dues. Can I rejoin? Blah blah blah. They pulled out my file. He said, look, for what you owe, you just go and pay for 2 more years of dues. You can be a life member. So I did that. Met a guy named Jim Boney, an older guy, and he was their ambassador, goodwill ambassador. Got me involved, convinced me to come back in October for the first reunion that I had ever attended. So the way I was working as a substitute teacher and school bus driver, I was in a semi-retired mode at that point. And I went back, and I get to the airport, and I get my rental vehicle, and I see 2 guys, a real old man and a very straight up young guy, and I go over and offer them. I said, you guys are going to town to this reunion? Yes, we are. And I said, I've got a car, can I offer you a ride? And the young guy says, thank you very much, but General Allison here has a ride coming for him. They're just a little bit late. It was John Allison, the Flying Tigers. He was still alive, and I got to talk to him. And I'm like, oh my God, And they said, over there was a 2-star general, General McCutcheon. He was saying that there is a young lady here from Missouri that's supposed to have a ride waiting for her. They haven't showed up. It's been 2 hours. The travel agency she went through didn't supply it. Would you offer her a ride? I said, okay. So she comes out. So she had changed her clothes, but she was dressed warm. Woman, maybe about 42 years old. She has her luggage with her, then some old luggage in a shadow box with a flag in it, and I tell her who I am. The general introduces her, okay, ride in to get the stuff in the car, and ride into town, about a 20-minute drive. I just casually said to her, what's your connection to this group here, because you're way too young to be married to any of these guys. She said, well, my dad was a pilot, and he was shot down and killed, and I was 6 years old. And I'm looking for people that knew my dad. Okay, so one question to another, where was this? And we're not confidant. Oh, okay, what aircraft did he fly? A-26s. Wow, I worked on those. I said, when was he shot down? He said, middle of December of 1967. I said, I don't recall an airplane going down in the middle of December, but December 29th, 1967, one of the A-26s was shot down. My friend Paul Foster was on it. And she just turned ghostly pale. And her eyes got big, her mouth dropped, and she started to cry. Paul Foster, he was on the airplane that my dad was a pilot of. So they were recovered in the early 90s, about 1991, finally. All 3, Carlos Cruz, Bill Potter, and Paul Foster. And they were finally identified. And in 1995, they were buried in Arlington in the same grave. And I have since journeyed to Arlington, and I have a picture of their grave. So that was the beginning of me remembering. So I made a mission of finding out what happened to the crews that were lost in the 12 months that I was there. And because my memory, I'm starting to have some memory problem due to some strokes, I thought, before I forget, I got to journalize this stuff. Someone may want to see it someday. So I have it, and this is part of it here. And that was December 29th. Then in January, the VO-67 people came in November of 67, and they stayed till about June of 68. And they lost 19 people out of 3 aircraft, and they got pulled out. But I have all their names, where it happened, the ranks, and where they were shot down. I have all that. And we go into April 24, 1968. Captain George Hertling, A-26 Navigator. They were on a run over the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and AAA came through the canopy and hit him. It hit his right shoulder, and it literally just destroyed it. And the pilot is continuing his run. He pulls up out. His navigator is not talking to him. He comes back. He managed to get back to Non Phnom Penh, and of course the alert went out. And they went out there. They got him out of there. And after it was over with, of course, everybody that since the airplane was shot, all the different mechanics had to go out and look at their specialty, and they hadn't cleaned anything up out of there. And I can remember looking into the canopy and I was looking at the engines and seeing the remains of what was left when they took him out of there. So that was very nerve-wracking. That really brought the war back to where we were. We could actually see someone that was, prior to that time, all we knew, the planes took off, went somewhere, and they came back. And so that was the second one that really got to me. From there, on April 30th, Captain Heitch and Captain Louis Gullerman drove the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Laos. They were shot down, and today I don't know if they were ever recovered. I know for the longest while they weren't. And then from there, John Albanese. I met John Albanese from one of my friends there. They had been stationed stateside together. John Albanese was a helicopter crewman. So on May 23rd, and at the same birth date as my youngest son, not the same year, but the same date, May 23rd, this crew went off on a so-called training mission, and they ended up in South Vietnam, which doesn't make sense. They were shot down, and the official report said it was a training mission. They don't know why that the aircraft didn't make it back, but they went in looking for them, and they could not perform a rescue or recovery because of too heavy enemy concentration. So that was in May, and they weren't recovered until February of that year, and a Marine patrol came up upon the crash site and returned the remains. In that crew, it was Dusty 51, and the tail number 66-13295, 56th Air Commander Wing, Captain James McCullum, Captain William Taylor, Staff Sergeant John Kuhn, Sergeant Robert Fink, Sergeant John Albanese Jr., and Staff Sergeant Thomas Burr. He was a combat photographer. And I did not know, and there was no documentation that I could find about this combat photographer on this aircraft. I just learned about this a year ago, Memorial Day. Someone had read a post I put on Facebook about every Memorial Day I talk about someone that I knew or had knowledge of that died in war. So I always do that. I never talk about myself. I didn't do anything, but people I knew did. So that became a problem for me. And they were, like I said, they were recovered in November, finally. And on May 24th, Captain Ronald Donald Button and Airman Second Class James Burks was on a T-28 Trojan attack plane, and for some unknown reason it crashed in Thailand. They don't know why, but they were recovered finally. So these things added together kind of, I don't know if you call it survivor's guilt or what, but I worked on airplanes and making them fly, and people got on them, went off, and didn't come back. So in my mind, this is much later, when I finally, after 2008, 2009, when I finally admitted to myself that yes, I served, and started talking to people and about these things, I got this feeling that, you know, if I had been a little slower or a little faster repairing an airplane, especially the one that Paul Foster was on, so I had worked on that aircraft, they wouldn't have been in that spot at that moment when that round came through the airplane. So I had pretty major issues with this. And I always tell people I did absolutely nothing. I've never done anything great or heroic, but I stood in the shadows of those that did. I volunteered at the museum at Dover Air Force Base, and a guy came in there after I did, and he's 100% disabled, PTSD, part of it. He was at Mount Confidant the same exact time I was there. He was in radio communication, the comms office. He never saw an airplane, and he never saw a crew person, but he talked to him on the radio. And he had problems hearing the different things that were going on. So I was fed up with the VA. When I got out, I had hepatitis. I got out, they gave me compensation for a year, then said, okay, we're not compensating you anymore. I got an injured shoulder, I got an injured back, I got a sinus problem that will never clear up. They said, you're service related, but we're going to give you 0%. I have no idea what that means. That's why you have a service-related injury, but we're not going to cover you for it. So that stayed on my record. I mean, that was in late '69, I finally said the end of that. So in 1992, being a volunteer firefighter in Delaware, there was a bad outbreak of hepatitis B. And first responders were exposed to people with this stuff and getting hepatitis. So the state came out and said, we're going to give all first responders hepatitis shots so they don't get it. If you had hepatitis in the past, you need to get your records so we can see what it was and do some blood work to see if you need the shots again. So I went back to the VA. Initially they said that your records were destroyed out there in Kansas City when they had the big fire on that one floor, destroyed records. They told everybody your records were destroyed. They weren't. It was just that one floor, just one section.
Mostly Army. Mostly Army, right?
Everybody.
All but the records that were destroyed were mostly Army records.
I believe you're correct on that. So they're doing some work on me, and I had to go back for another checkup, a blood check, and this clerk hands me this manila envelope. It's pretty thick. And it said, don't you ever lose this. Said, you can make copies and give to people, but don't you ever lose this. So I go home, and I look at it, it's all my medical records. He found them. So I go in the Agent Orange registry, because I worked on an aircraft that carried Agent Orange, and they sprayed it there at the base, herbicides, you can't say Agent Orange. But anyway, his friend at the museum, we're talking, and I'm having problems with Agent Orange registry, so he talked to his counselor and got me a direct number, and I finally got on it. And at the museum, there's an A-26 aircraft. It's not done in the battle route configuration, but it's an A-26. And at the time, I was a volunteer supervisor. So this guy wants to go on this airplane. I said, yeah, we can do it, you know, and unlock it, we get in. And I'm going into it, and I get into the position where Paul Foster would have been, and I just literally freaked out. You know, I told him, I got to get out of here. This is it. This is the place where my friend, I got to get out. So he goes and tells his counselor, and knowing that I'm not going to go back to VA, he tells me his counselor would like me to come in and talk about him, how he's doing as a tour guide for the VA, associating with people. Or not VA, but at the museum. So I do. And then for 5 minutes we talk about Virgil, and the counselor stops and looks at me and says, okay, now I want to talk about you. And she brings up my files. Says, I'm looking at your file, and you got all these things wrong here with you, but you're not being compensated. Why? I said, I didn't know. They told me they weren't back then, and she started talking to me more and more, and after my third visit, she said, I need to have you seen by a psychiatrist. I really believe that you have a survivor guilt. And they diagnosed me with PTSD. Initially, the people that make the high-level decisions, they disagreed with her and the VA doctor. They kicked it back, said no. I was given a number to a lawyer, and I was sent to another doctor, and the doctor looked at me about midway through, almost through, and he said, normally I don't tell veterans what I think. I'll evaluate and send them a letter or whatnot, but I'm going to tell you right now, you're at least 50%. I said, I'm going to put you in, you're going to be cleared. So a year ago, I was finally granted a total of 70% of disabilities after, so 1968 to 2018, 40-some years.
Did they back pay you?
For 2 years. And now there's another appeal going in because there's some stuff they did not address. I got a real bad lower back issue, and it started in there. Something happened. But
I apologize that they have taken so long to address.
You didn't do it. You didn't do it. I'm just amazed that someone actually looked at me and said, what happened 40 years ago was wrong, and we're going to try to fix it.
I'm happy that they finally.
So it's working. I still have some problems with, as you just saw, with the memories. So that is the big impact on me from being over at the longest 12 months of my life. 34 air crew members were lost. In a lot of cases, they weren't recovered between the Air Force and the Navy. We didn't work at the same place the Navy guys did. They had their own area, but off duty, we would see our Navy counterparts and talk with them. They'd go to the Airmen's Club, or they'd go to the mess hall or the chow hall, or sometimes in town on a day off. And compare, how do you fix this, how you do that. So we got to know the mechanics, and we knew of the crews. Never met their crews like I did with the Air Force side, but we did. And there was a certain brotherhood, because Non-Confidant was a group of people. We had the Army there, we had Air America flying in and out of there, CIA was in there vaguely sometimes. You see people you didn't recognize, they looked strange, and it was doing a lot of stuff in the Laos. So they called it the secret wars, that we weren't there type stuff, but there was a war in South Vietnam, but there was another war going on in Laos and Cambodia on the Ho Chi Minh Trail as they came out of North Vietnam. And that's what our groups did. That's what we supported.
Before I get into asking you some other questions, I would like to tell you that your job mattered, and you mattered, and that what you did made a difference. Period. And please don't tell me otherwise, because you're breaking my heart. Okay? Us as mechanics, and I am one, every time we turn a wrench.
We're at the bottom end of the ladder.
No. Cooks matter. Mechanics matter. They don't go places without us.
That's
okay?
True.
They don't get their energy without cooks. They don't get paid. They're not happy without admin. Right?
Yeah.
We matter. All right? Those planes didn't get off the ground. They couldn't fulfill a mission. Your friend was on a mission that was top secret, okay? Whether you to fix his plane faster or slower, you don't know what that mission was. We will not know, okay? And whatever that mission was, the bad guys knew.
Oh, yeah.
And the bad guys took them out for it, okay?
Yep.
But
A week ago, I would argue that point with you, but being here at this reunion and meeting other people that were at my level of involvement, I feel very good about what I did.
and you should. So please don't repeat that what you did didn't matter. Okay? Because it absolutely did. I did an interview yesterday. When these interviews come out, please listen to them. There was a young man that did some explaining of some of those top secret things.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa. Okay?
Yeah,
Whoa.
exactly.
So please don't feel like your troubleshooting of engines and fixing things didn't matter, because they absolutely do. Okay? Every nut, every bolt, every time a plane came back and you did something about it, that pilot returned. Okay? Every time a plane took off, you had something to do with that. And our mission was what it was. Whether we should have been there, whether we shouldn't have been there, we all had patriotism in our heart, and we were fulfilling our mission, whether the hippies liked it or not. Somebody's got to defend our country. And we were those people. Okay?
We believed in what was going on. We believed in the mission. That's why
You did it so I could do it, so my little girl could run free, so your son could run free. I don't know if you had other kids. We need to talk about that. Okay?
Three altogether. And my oldest grandson went in the Marine Corps.
So that we can have the rights that we do. What you did mattered. Sir?
Mm-hmm. I understand. I
Okay.
got you. I read loud and clear.
Okay.
As far as what I did there outside of the mechanic work, looking back, people put trust in kids to fix stuff. And that's what we were. We were out of high school maybe a year and a half. And, you know, here's one guy that's a career, two guys that are career Air Force, and they're relying on kids that have been in the Air Force maybe 2 years to fix these big, high, expensive World War II relics, and take us out and say, here's what they say is wrong, talk to the crew chief, figure it out, fix it. And we did. They come out and check on us. Sergeant Weatherman that I mentioned, the guy was terrific. My God, he was a father to us, he was a supervisor to us, he was a chaplain in some cases. The man just, he was just terrific. I was able to talk with him about 5 years ago. He was in Tampa, Florida. I found him, and I called him, and I talked with him for about an hour and a half, and it was great. Really great. Two other guys I served with, I found them and talked with them, and they were like, Harry, yeah, I remember you, but, you know, I want to forget everything we did there. When I got home, it wasn't good to be a veteran, so I just put everything behind me, and I just don't care. They didn't have the interest that I did. They didn't remember the stuff I remembered either. I have a very acute memory. The fire company I belonged to, we did a history of 125 years, about 5 years ago, and I ended up chairing the committee that did this history research, and the stuff that I remembered, that mentioned a name, and oh yeah, I remember when he did this, and guys looking at me, how do you remember that stuff? I don't know. I didn't have this type of memory until I came to terms with this stuff. I don't sleep well, but I'm at the point now where I don't want to sleep well, because if I do, I want to have dreams, and I don't want the dreams. I don't have good dreams. But anyway, I know when I got out of the service, I said, whatever I do when I get out of the service, it's not going to be something that's going to get someone hurt. So I ended up working in an oil refinery in the Fire and Safety Department. And I did that for 22 years.
Where?
Getty Oil, Delaware.
Okay. So you went back to the cold.
Yeah, I did. And met a girl, married her, had kids, you know, that sort of stuff. Had grandkids. And then Texaco bought out Getty Oil, and they cut jobs back. I gotten hurt on the job. And after the fourth surgery, they said, okay, you can't do your job, you go away. 22 years. But that's how I got involved in substitute school teaching, driving school bus for special needs kids, which didn't pay anywhere near what I was making at the refinery, but was so rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
And I would work 4 or 5 days a week as a substitute teacher, and it was just great. I retired when I had a C-spine, my back. I started having a real serious problem with my back. I had to have C-spine surgery to get using my left arm back. And at that point, I looked at the different retirement things I had set up and had coming to me, and I said, you know something, I can make about a third more money sitting home, sleeping late than I can working. So actually came out to about 50% more, and all things came about. So that worked out well for me.
Hanging out with the grandkids?
Oh yeah, yeah. The youngest one, he's 13, and he comes and stays with us maybe once or twice a week or something like that, you know, overnight, summertime more so. And he's a geography fanatic. You can mention a highway somewhere in this country, he can tell you which way it runs, what the speed limit is on it, where it goes, Air Force bases, Nellis, you know, he knows I'm going to go out to Las Vegas in the fall for another reunion, you'll see Brotherhood. Are you going to Nellis? Are you going to do this? Are you going to see that? You know, the boy and he's got a fantastic memory, similar to mine, so it's just great. And he's the youngest. The oldest, he just left for a mechanic, automotive mechanic, a tuner school in Texas that get him educated. We can work on race cars and things like that. So he's got a Marine Corps paid for that when he got hurt. He got disabled back issue. And granddaughter, she's going to college to be a veterinarian.
Fantastic.
That's good.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
What other veteran organizations are you with?
I'm with the Air Commando Association and the Thailand Laos Cambodia Brotherhood. And I am strongly attached to those. The Air Commando Association has a foundation where donations go to it, and they use that money to help the wounded special operations Air Force people. They come back, the stuff that the government doesn't do for them or takes too long. One case, a guy in California, he needed a wheelchair ramp at his house, and the government said it's going to be 3 to 6 months before all the red tape's done. One of our members found out about it, contacted the office in Florida, and within 3 weeks we had a ramp built for him. Things like that.
Wonderful. What was the name of that organization?
Air Commando Association.
Air Commando.
It's down in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. Actually, very Esther, right out 3 miles west of Herbert Field.
Well, thank you and thank them. That's amazing.
And I do support that quite a bit. And I go down every year and help early for the reunions to help set things up. And I've met the most wonderful people. I've met, I had the most fantastic friends. You know, I don't meet anyone that's not, I just see all these positives in people, and I like it. I really do like it. So.
What are some life lessons you've learned from your military service?
I learned how to be a mechanic. I went in not knowing anything. A funny side story on this. On wrenches, you being a mechanic, you know you have an open end wrench and a boxed end wrench. They told me to get a boxed end wrench, and I went looking for a wrench that had a box on the end of it, not realizing they meant on the inside. I just saw this circle. I said, "There's no, it's not here." It's there, Harry. You know, bright. You know, it's this. I didn't even know how to tell the size. I didn't know it was stamped on the door or anything. Yeah, but anyway, and they finally got this thing and they showed it to me. They said, "Well, that's not a box." I'm arguing with them. So you're messing with it. That's not a box. And they had to educate me on what tools looked like. And 3 years later, I'm doing mechanic work on my own automobile. And I did that up until I was financially able to go and pay someone else to do it. I sat back and read a book. But I did all my own mechanical work, and I learned from the Air Force. I learned about tools, I learned about mechanics. I learned that if it's broken, it can be fixed somehow. You may have to replace parts, but things can be fixed. So I have tools for just about everything, and I used to make tools for certain things. Well, in the Air Force, I made a special tool with a crossboard screwdriver on it, but it's T-handle. So on the cowling on A1s, Sky Raiders, instead of having a long screw that you had to really screwdriver, you had to pry and slip on this. I put it up there with the T-handle and make a twist, and it popped the locks off and take it off. People wanted that tool. One guy offered to buy it from me. I said, no, go make your own. But went over to the welding shop, told them what I wanted, and I had the bits and pieces, and they put it together, and it works. And I still have it in my toolbox. It's still sitting there. I'm looking at it. So that, meeting people from different parts of the country and going to Thailand, my first impression of Thailand was, oh my God, this is horrible. And I wrote home and said that. So these people are dirty, not very good stuff. My mother kept every letter I ever sent home. I was in the Air Force. And when she died, my dad asked me what I want to do with them. I said, throw them away. No, you read them. So anyway, I read them all. It took me like 2 days. The first letter in Thailand was like, this is horrible. Hot, humid, stinks Bangkok. We're in the worst part of Bangkok. Go up to Nakhon Phanom, it's worse. When I left, the last letter I wrote home, it said, I really dread leaving here. These people are they were the kindest people. They are so nice. So you go from being a kid to being an adult in 12 months and understanding there are different people in this world. And we're all here for the same purpose, to live. And live successfully to provide for yourself and your family. And don't interfere with that. Don't interfere with someone's ability, desire to do for themselves and their family. So that education from the Air Force. The 3 years, I was at 3 years active. I had a 6-month early out. Then they added another 6-month early out on top of it because I'd have less than 6 months left. But I did have to be in the reserves for 3 years. But that was probably the most eye-opening experience I've ever had. Meeting people from different places and hearing how their customs were in different parts of the country. And it didn't matter to me what their nationality was, what language they spoke, what their last name was, how it was written, how it was pronounced. They liked me and I liked them. And I used that going forward into the oil refinery with a lot of different people. Some of my best friends didn't look like me at all. And it was just a good thing. The stuff I learned in 3 years, and not knowing I was learning it, I was able to later on in life see, oh yeah, well, we do it this way. Then when I became a teacher, working with a substitute teacher, working with special ed kids that had difficulty reading and comprehension and stuff like that, or some math stuff, basic math, and I did a lot of work with them and talked with kids from different nationalities, and a lot of times they came in from different countries, and their parents moved into the East Coast and sent their kids to school there. I got to talk with them. I actually had a boy from Thailand. I remembered some of my Thai language, started talking to him, he write me right up.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the Air Force was the foundation to learn how to get along with people, accept people for who they are, and what they do in life, not what they look like. So,
excellent.
And I have practiced that ever since.
Excellent. Okay. Is there anything you feel like we haven't discussed or should be added to this interview?
During the time in Nakhon Phanom, everything was secret. We did not know hardly anything. We weren't told as the mechanics. We weren't told. The airplane didn't come back unless it was someone we knew. Hey, where is this guy? Where is Paul Foster? Or where's John Albanese? That's the only way we ever found out anything. The others, it was long time in between there, and we realized, you know, I haven't worked on tail number such and such for a while. What happened to it? Oh, it got shot down. When? Last month. You know, they didn't tell us a whole lot. I think if they had included us in on the purpose of the mission, our attitudes might have been a little bit better. Most of us had the attitude, man, I can't wait till this is over so I can get out of the Air Force. Because we're working on World War II stuff, you know, and when Vietnam was over with, those planes were obsolete and the need for those mechanics was obsolete. So we knew that, and we had the old guys that were, you know, been in for close to 20 years tell us that. Said, boys, you know, this is the wrong career field for you. So if you don't transfer, at least get out in the civilian world, and there's all these jobs out there right now. You know, it's great opportunities. I saw a staff sergeant, 4 stripes on his sleeve, approaching his 20th year, and they told him, you're a staff sergeant, 20 years, you got to retire. And he was so upset. He was a 7 level. He said, 20 years. And I remember him taking his fingers like this, 20 years, and I get 4 of those in my sleeve. Look at that, boys. That's all I got to show for 20 years. That's all. And there's no chance of me getting promoted because they aren't promoting us. Tech sergeant, I saw 1 senior master sergeant in that group. I never saw a chief master in our career field. Never. Yeah, and that was just the word. But that was the government back in the day. That's the 60s. So that opportunity put me in a position where I got in this fire department, and I did that. I've been a volunteer firefighter for over 55 years. I don't do firefighting now, but I do administrative side. And, so I can take all of my life experiences and take it back to starting in September of 1965 through September of 1968 and say, this is what got me to be able to do these other things. So I have nothing bad to say about my time in the Air Force other than I wish I'd known more of what we were doing and why we were doing it.
What message would you like to leave for future generations who will view or hear this interview?
If you have any question in your life of what you want to do after you get out of high school and you choose not to go to college, look at the Air Force and the opportunities in the Air Force or the Navy or the Coast Guard or the Army or the Marines. They're not all combat people. The people in combat, they choose to go to combat. They choose to be combat people because that's their makeup. It's no longer the draft. You know, here you go, you're drafted. Here's a gun. In 6 weeks, you're going to be in Vietnam. It's not like that now. All the combat troops, they are Type A personalities. They're smart. They pick up on things real quick and easy. But you got to be in the military today. So that's one group of people. But for every combat person, it's got to be just 10 people doing stuff to get them out there. Computerized warfare is just expanding. And these young people today, with their video games and their computer knowledge, which is just like breathing, the drone operators, these people grew up doing the video games because they were so quick with that. So the opportunity with the military, it's there. You have to look for it, but you can't be a trouble person because they'll pick that out real quick. And if you've been in trouble or if you lied, they're going to, now if you did it, get in here, you're going to do it forever. They find out, you're out, gone. I know 3 people that happened to. And I laughed at them when they told me. I said, see, I told you before, don't, keep straight, tell them the truth. You didn't do it. You lied. Now look at you. And you've got that hanging over your head for the rest of your life. You got kicked out of the Air Force before you ever got into basic because you lied. But it is a great, the military is great. It's necessary. Our military, it got us from the Revolutionary War to where we are today. We are the most prosperous country in the world. We take care of everybody else. And without the military there to show the rest of the world, hey, don't mess with the United States because things are going to go bad for you real quick, we wouldn't be where we are. So, yeah. For the younger generation, if you don't want to go to, if you don't plan on going to a trade school or college, pick something in the military. There's something there that you can do that you'll like. So,
Absolutely.
yes,
Go support.
absolutely.
That concludes our interview with Harry Bright.
Thank you for your time today, and thank you for your excellent military service.